I'm Tim Kittro, and here to bring home the bacon are Big Ryan the Fat Guy.
Sometimes I get to do both. What's up, YouTube? The NFL picks against the spread for Week 10, 21-22 NFL season. Fat Guy, we are 4 games above 500 this year. On to the Thursday nighter, Baltimore at Miami. Miami 7.5-point dogs at home. Currently, this game is out so early we don't have any betting market info. Your thoughts on this game?
We're trying to get closing line value, but there's a little extra juice. I'll admit it. It's almost like slight cheating, I guess, for the contest, but it's not quite 7 and it's definitely not 8. So what do you put the line at? Well, the line's at 7.5. And I think that hook's a powerful one, right? Like Miami's not good by any stretch of the imagination this year. At least they were able to pick up a win against the Houston Texans in a game that generated 9 turnovers, the most since 2016. A real game of ineptitude. But all of that being said, the Ravens at 7.5, laying 7.5. I don't see like this is the public starting to get a little bit better. Like sharp isn't the word, but like aware of key numbers. And I think this is the one where they go, I don't know, bro. I don't know if I'm going to add 7.5 to my parlay. And by the way, parlays are a big are largely taken into considerations in a lot of these lines because of the popularity, the surging popularity. So all of that being said, the teaser number would have been like, in the 9s. So that makes me think that a lot of the times when they put the number around 7.5, that I don't think that there's going to be movement in favor of the favorite. Otherwise, it could generate teasers that run through all the key numbers. I mean, not that 7.5 doesn't already, but like 8.5 to 2.5 is kind of like the best teaser drop down as far as 6 points goes. So that little small, the casino always wants small edge. Are they really putting out, lines with that type of forethought? Not the adopters, but the early originators. Yeah, I would think so. So that type of thinking gives me the idea that this could close closer to 7 or stay at the same at 7.5 add juice for Miami, making a closing line value play despite Miami being a bad team at 7.5. And yes, I don't really care who plays quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Believe it or not, here you could make an argument for Brissett, to be perfectly honest. So that's another thing in the comments section. Who do you guys like between Tagovailoa and Brissett? Weigh it out in the comments section. I'd love to hear it.
Next up, Tampa Bay at Washington. Washington 10-point dogs at home. Fat Guy, is there any closing line value on either side?
I don't think so. I mean, contest-wise, we're just going to take the double-digit dogs. Washington has been very poor ATS, so obviously you regress to the mean via dilution, but I still think that, do you know what I mean? That lines are going to be juiced up a little bit for the football team and juiced against the Tampa Bay Bucks, creating a perfect storm of micro edges for the Washington football team. 10 points, I feel, is just slightly too many. Of course, I'd love 10.5, right? Because I feel like that would just be an ideal line. And it very well could shift that way just because of the popularity of the Bucks. But I don't think CLV is a big factor at play here. But again, we're speculating on speculating. So of course it could be wrong, but this is probably an elastic line too, so it probably moves very easily, especially in these early markets. But I'm going to take the football team. I'm going to take the 10 points simply for the contest.
And breaking news here, 82% of the first 189 bets are on the Washington football team.
I like that.
Next up, Detroit at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, a 9.5-point favorites at home. Fat Guy, closing line value on this game?
We got a look-ahead line. And the look-ahead line is dictating the Pittsburgh Steelers at 9.5 points. The Lions, we know they're healthy. They're coming off a bye. Although the Lions are one of those teams where, like, I think look-ahead lines favors them because if the Lions get a major injury, how much worse could they be, right? Even then, Jared Goff, there's going to be a drop-off to whomever the backup is, so that's always in consideration. But, like, the Lions lose even a cluster of injuries, like, is that really going to affect, you know what I mean, how good they are? And it's not going to be, the drop-off will be minimal. Whereas the Steelers, that could be a really bad problem. Not that I want it to happen, but if TJ Watt goes down, that will certainly affect the line. If Big Ben goes down, that will affect the line. Other than that, you kind of need a cluster of injuries or like, I don't know, 4 or 5 starters, something like that for that to happen. But other than that, I think this is a clear Detroit Lions play, and I don't mind it. I don't mind it now either. So 9.5 points, Detroit Lions, book it.
And if Jared Goff was to theoretically go down, we'd have David Blau coming in, former Cleveland Brown.
David Blau, yeah.
Next up, bringing up Cleveland, they travel to Foxborough to take on the Pats, who are 2.5-point favorites at home. 67% of early bettors are on the Patriots at -2.5. Only 88 bets so far, Fat Guy. Any closing line value in this game?
Yeah. I think closing line value is actually best realized by taking Cleveland money line. I think it's probably at an all-time high. I hate using my opinion of who I think's better. I think Cleveland's a far better club. This is one of the few times that I'm going to excise that right. I said that a couple times about the Chargers, and I feel that way about Cleveland. But I also feel like this is a line similar to the Cincinnati line last week, where it's going to trend down. Like I don't think the betting public on, oddly enough, we always line up the show pros versus Joes. Sometimes they align. It does happen. It happened in Kansas City a couple of years ago when Kansas City was covering a lot and they just couldn't put enough points. Of course, we've been seeing bad variance with Kansas City, but we're talking about Cleveland here. And I think pros and Joes are going to like Cleveland in this spot. And I think the best way to realize this from an early betting standpoint is to take the Browns money line. A friend of mine, both of us bet on Cleveland last week, and this is a really good indication of pricing because getting an early line at a good price, it's not always realized. Like for instance, I took Houston +7 last week. I lost. But it closed at Houston +4, +4.5. I'm only going to realize that value if it lands on 5, 6, or 7. And so it's not like you're not going to get as much of an edge over a long term. I feel this is still something that's in the old fat guy's brain. Whereas my friend last week, he bought Cleveland really early at +137. And I only got him at +111, +112. That value, that's a really big gap. Right? It's a really big gap. And I feel like that's going to be an issue here for the Cleveland Browns. If you buy late, you're going to end up getting a bum price. So I do think it's going to trend in their favor. And I do think a buy now on the money line is favorable. And since it's just a spread contest, we're going to take the Cleveland Browns and the ugly 2.5 points here.
I really like how you put that because I totally agree that from a against the spread standpoint, when I saw this line, I was actually confused. Like I thought this was a mispricing, and it made me jump on New England right away. And that's not because I think New England's a better team. It's because I think the books know something that we don't by putting this line out as high as it was.
Yeah, you might have a point.
So, but I like what you said about buying Cleveland money line early because I only see this line coming down or stay, even if it stays as is, it's very unlikely that this goes up to 3 or 3.5. Well,
no way.
I shouldn't say it's not unlikely to go to 3.
Say that, but we don't believe that the probabilities are strong that could happen.
Yeah.
That's how you have to frame it.
And I misspoke there because I'm saying I don't think it gets up to 3.5. I don't think it moves up there. I think it's more likely to move towards a pick'em than it is 3.5.
Yeah, or 3 even. I think it's more likely to go to pick than 3.
So this was an interesting one for sure. Next up, Fat Guy, Jacksonville at Indy. Indy 10.5-point favorites at home. Is there any closing line value on either side?
I do, and I got to thank the scheduling in the NFL. Not for in terms of let's call it player entertainment. Not that Big Rye wouldn't call this a 5-star entertainment game, but in terms of easing my memory, right? Because the Fat Guy's brain used to be legendary in terms of recall memory, and it's gotten pretty poor these days. So thankfully, we had this exact same scenario last week. Jets played Indianapolis. Indianapolis was 10.5-point favorites, and it settled around 9.5, right? So it's this is the same type situation, except Jacksonville is coming off a big win, a big upset of the weekend. Probably a survivor killer, 9-6 over the Bills, who had a really poor performance. So all of that being said, where's the closing line value? I think it's going to be on the Jags, and I think this is going to close at 10. That's what I really believe. And 10 seems like a perfect push number. And so what I'm going to look to do is take the Jags here early, and if it gets to 9.5 good juice, I'm going to go for the middle, I think, on this game. Indy did crush the Jets, but the Jets were one play away from one of the most ridiculous backdoor covers. And that's why I philosophize about when in doubt, take the points, because there's no think of that game if anyone watched that very boring Thursday nighter, which we streamed, and we do stream every Thursday and Monday for primetime. Think about that, the attitude that you kind of saw from the Indianapolis Colts is they were up, 24 at some point, 34? It was really, they were up huge, right? And the Jets came back with a third-string quarterback and kept scoring, and the Indy put up very, very little resistance, right? Because they did have a win locked up. And that the Jets were one play away from a really, really ugly backdoor cover. But this is the beauty about betting sports here. No one cares about the circumstances in which you win or lose. There's just an L in your account history, or there's a W. And that's all that matters here. If they win an ugly backdoor, who cares? It means absolutely no difference. So that being said, I think this is a Jags 10.5, because I think there is going to be closing line value, because it'll have a very similar market. Considering the Jets came off a upset win the week before they played Indy against Cincinnati, who was kind of vaunted at that time, and the Bills with I think the strongest Super Bowl odds, except maybe Tampa Bay, but they might have overtaken them after Tampa Bay lost to New Orleans. I'm not tracking that market super close, so don't bite my head off. But all that being said, this is like an identical spot, so I'm just going to go with history here and recent history. And I'm going to take the Jags plus 10.5 because I think it'll settle around 10. I know I went long on this one, but it's so interesting how these markets feel mirrored, right? And as far as a tier system too goes, the Jags and the Jets are very close. They're right in that bottom three, right?
The things I'd like to add is the Jags closed at around plus 760 on the money line, and I think the Bills, I don't know if it was to win Super Bowl or to make it to the Super Bowl, where they were 4-1 at last I checked. So very big win for Jacksonville. That win was technically bigger than the Bills either making the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy.
Mind-blowing to even think of, yeah.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons at the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys are getting 10 points at home despite a poor outing, and Atlanta with an impressive outing. Fat Guy, is there any closing line value on this one?
I absolutely think there is, and I think it's on Atlanta. Atlanta pulling off a very surprising win. They were they needed a last second kick, but they were blowing out for a large portion of the game, right? And Dallas only scored in garbage time, more or less. So yeah, and they lost to Denver as huge favorites. This has been a weekend of the dogs, that's for sure. Oh my goodness. Sorry, we have the other game on here, and I never get distracted, but I just saw an amazing play by Tennessee. All of that being said, I don't think that the public sentiment is going to be strong on the Cowboys. Recency bias will be on Atlanta's side and against Dallas, so it's just kind of one of those scaling effects, and I think this settles around, I'm going to say 9. I'm going to say 9 points. So I'm going to get that extra point. I might even just take Atlanta money line, drawing on that realizing of equity, because the gap between 9 and 10 is really, really small. And what that ends up doing is, I just get a perfect push frequency of 10 in added value, and that's not really good enough for me. So this weekend, if it's proven anything, underdogs can win. You know what I mean? This is sports, and I think I have a higher variance but better chance of realizing my equity and taking a really big dog like the Atlanta Falcons, and I don't think they're going to win. I don't, but are they going to win at a higher probability than the odds that are laid? So it's going to be Atlanta, and it's going to be the 10 points.
The Fat Guy. Next up, we have the Saints traveling to the amazing play Tennessee Titans, who are 2.5-point favorites.
Oh yeah, at
home. Is there any closing line value on this game as Tennessee is playing at the moment?
Well, this is the thing. I got kind of influenced here, so it's not really fair for me to say. Tennessee has taken the lead in this game here, and this would be a a reasonable upset. So I think Tennessee minus 2.5 is, would be the play for that. All those things being said, because the Saints losing a game, like, this is how I love the parody of sports. The Saints beat Tampa Bay and then they lose to Atlanta. How great is that? Back-to-back weeks. And now Tennessee loses Derrick Henry. And at this current time in the game, because we are filming this quite early, they are up, right? So closing line value, this is completely biased and it's during it. So this line isn't even available while we're filming it, just because the game is on. It'll be Tennessee minus 2.5 for obvious reasons. So also another thing I'm kind of curious about is the usage between running backs on Tennessee. And that's another thing too, is what do you guys think the true value of Derrick Henry is worth percentage wise? I only think for me, it's like 3% maybe to that team, but I've heard grandiose claims of 20%. And I really don't think so. So another thing in the comment section to fight over is, what's the true win probability effect that Derrick Henry's absence leaves on the Tennessee Titans going forward? On to the next one,
which is Buffalo at the New York Jets. Jets 13-point dogs at home. Fat guys are closing line value in this game.
I don't know. This one's like the really tough. It's a double secret probation. The Jets beat Cincinnati, get thumped. Thump sounds like a funner word, like that. Like, how they say Tom in Britain with the TH. I never get that. But anyways, and G off with a G. It's not really Jeff. Come on now. That being said, Jets plus 13 will just be the play, purely a contest pick. I'm interested in this market because I want to see how elastic or inelastic the public backing for the Buffalo Bills is. Like, is this Jags loss devastating enough? And it's kind of curious. I almost want to measure this metric in terms of Survivor effect, because this would have been the game that kicked out the most people in Survivor, this in Dallas. So I'm very, very curious as to what type of effect, and elastic is, I'm using it in terms of the, Econ 101 for those of you amateur university participants like myself, is elastic in terms of, are people reactive to this Buffalo loss and are jaded by them, and they're either going to bet against the Bills or not play at all, or are they inelastic and they still believe the Bills are the real deal? So this is the market I want to watch for most, and the market that I have the market I have the least idea about in terms of prognostication. I don't want to speculate this game, and I don't want to speculate on speculating this game. On to the next one.
On the a note for this game is that the Bills opened 13.5 on look-ahead line, so it only came down half a point from the look-ahead line to the current opening line of this game. Fat guy, next up, Minnesota at the LA Chargers. Chargers minus 2.5 points at home. Is there any closing line value on this game?
I'm not sure, but this is one of those games where I think the Chargers are just better. I really do. I like the Chargers. I like how they play. I have a bias as far as they go. I don't mind laying 2.5 points. I think this is a good price. I thought the price against Philly was a little bit low. Like, you know what I mean? Because you lay 2 at a good price, lay 2.5 at a great price, lay 1 at like not the greatest. So I think the Chargers here, I think this is a mispricing, and I think it should be 3 or closer to 3.5. I just think that there's value. So I'll definitely be taking the Chargers in this matchup. I'm not sure if there's closing line value because I'm not sure of the it's like an ELO rating of perception, and it's ELO. It's named after the guy, but I always assume it's an acronym, ELO. It's a chess rating system. So I like to try and think of all of these games in terms of perception, like where in people's minds are the Vikings compared to the Chargers, compared to the number, like all those 3 factors, and which way is it going to shift? As
well as home field advantage.
Correct. Yeah. Which, to be honest, is non-existent realistically for the Chargers. They get a lot of opposing fans at that stadium, SoFi. So all that being said, I think this is just the right play to take the Chargers. So Chargers minus 2.5 is going to be it.
And if this pushes up to 3 or 3.5, would you still be on the Chargers?
3.5, no, that's way too big. 3 good juice, I'd probably still take it. 2.5 is definitely a buy. And that's a great question, because let's be real here. Are these games that close in terms of percentage and edge? Absolutely, Big Ryan. Thank you for questioning that.
On to the next one. Carolina at Arizona. Arizona 6-point favorites at home. Any closing line value on either side?
Yeah, I think Carolina, despite a dreadful performance on by the Carolina Panthers, I think Arizona is bold enough to not risk injury for a lot of their players, considering how they're playing. Like, that's another game I lost money on. I took San Fran, but I bet it before the Murray news came out. I was ahead of the curve, and I only laid 2.5. It closed at 4.5, and then off you go. Still a loss, right? So I think if there's any sort of, let's call it any sort of injury, any sort of niggling injury, I think the Arizona is going to play it on the safe side, and they've proven it. And their record is definitely gives you more of a command to do so. They have to risk less. So that being said, I think there's more likely, just because of the uncertainty of Arizona, for there to be value on Carolina +6. But again, we're speculating on injuries to speculate on a line that speculates on a game. So this is like 3 layers removed. So it's not the strongest indicator. So that being, because don't forget, I have a gun to my head. I have to make the selection. So it's Carolina for those reasons. And that's why I think there's a better chance of closing on the value for Carolina. But this is one where I think it's more elastic, because that news can change really swiftly. And you get a healthy Kyler Murray, I could see this perking up to 8.5. So I think this 6 is kind of a stick in the mud, where it's built a little bit more closer to as if Colt McCoy is starting with a percentage of Kyler Murray. If there's good Kyler Murray news, I think this will definitely shift against Arizona and up to 8 or 8.5. That's my hypothesis.
I agree with you too, because I was going to actually ask that question. So you're pretty much at home, if you're deciding on this game, you're pretty much betting if Kyler Murray is going to play, because this feels like kind of a middling line. It doesn't feel like this is where this line would sit if he's out or if he's in. But
I bet the San Francisco one on because I was monitoring the practice situations on Friday.
Yeah.
And Cliff Kingsbury said if there's any sort of doubt in terms, if Kyler Murray pretty much isn't 100%, that they're not going to play him. And usually all that stuff's smoke and mirrors. And Big Ryan and I particularly don't care what a coach has said. This is the first time where I actually got a definitive answer and a definitive action. And that makes me think too, like I said, they're 8-1 now. They're in a commanding playoff position. And I think there's a team that has the luxury and the philosophy to kind of not risk it in terms of injury with their players, probably because they've seen the devastation from it too firsthand. So I think Arizona, you're just more likely to have a player sit out at the behest of a team's choices, not their own. That's why I think that this line has to be in that middle gray area, because I don't think Arizona is too aggressive in starting players that aren't 100%.
Next up, Philly at Denver. Denver is 1.5-point favorites at home. Fat Guy, is there closing line value on either side?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be on Denver. I think this could creep up to 3. And 1.5 points. Oh, that's so many points. Not between 0 and 2.5. Those are kind of less meaningful points. It's a bit of a dead zone, kind of like 4.5 to 5.5. That's a very, it's not linear movement. It moves a lot easier, right? It takes less money and less information to move said line. So that being said, Denver pulled off one of the bigger victories this weekend. So I'm going to go with them in terms of closing line value, because I'd much rather lay 1.5 than 3. So Denver Broncos -1.5 because of recency bias via their large underdog victory against the Dallas Cowboys, whereas the Eagles had a respectable but neutral performance against the Chargers in the minds of the betting public, in my opinion, with that last second loss to the LA Chargers.
Next up, Seattle at Green Bay. Green Bay 5-point favorites at home, and there's a lot of questions on both sides about which quarterback is going to be playing for both Seattle and Green Bay. I don't know the exact news. I know that Russell Wilson can come off the IR, And I don't even know exactly what the protocols are for when Rodgers can come back.
Well, the Rodgers one has got to be the biggest one because from what I understood from what I read, like again, there's a lot of gray area for mistakes, is that he said instead of he was vaccinated, he said he was immunized, but he wasn't vaccinated. So like the NFL, there's no precedence for how they're going to handle that. And I really don't know, you know. I have to pick this game. I don't like this type of uncertainty because I don't really have an expertise in, you know, gauging the league's response, let's say. So like this, I would never bet on this. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I would feel stupid if I got it wrong, and I have serious regret. And I always say, that's one of my favorite sayings that I use, is do what gives you the least amount of regret. When someone asks me for advice, well, I'm going to take my own advice, and I would have serious regret if I bet this and I had egg on my face in terms of how the league handled it. So I'm definitely not betting. It's purely a contest pick. Green Bay -5 with an assumption that this will be Geno Smith against Aaron Rodgers. I just want to see how the league handles this. You know, like, are they going to punish Aaron Rodgers and the team? You know, like, you know, it's not my personal feelings aside. It makes no difference to me. It's not what I want. I just feel like the league, that's the type of direction that they're usually headed in terms of, for lack of a better term, non-compliance. Not my favorite subject, Big Rye, but it's created this uncertainty, and we have to speculate. That's what this show does, right? So, you know, I like Aaron Rodgers. I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan. I hope he plays, but that's where this line is generated from, and that's where this selection is generated from. An Aaron Rodgers versus Geno Smith matchup. Let's go Green Bay.
Next up, Kansas City at the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 3-point dogs at home. Fat Guy, who you got on this Sunday night game?
This is a game I like the least. We're just going to take Las Vegas. I want to watch this game. I'm curious how this is going to line up, because Kansas City hasn't really put in a really good performance yet this year, except the Browns week 1, in my opinion. So we're going to take the Raiders. This will be for sure a 5-star entertainment divisional matchup. Do I think there's closing line value on either side? I'm really not sure. And that's the honest opinion. I'd love to tell you, like everyone on YouTube, this is a 5-star lock that can't lose, but that's just disingenuous. The best picks in the world against the spread are 56%. And this is not one of those picks. For me, it'll be a 50-50. So I think if I were to select this game 1,000 times, I would lose betting both sides. So I don't really like it. So it's going to be Las Vegas with the points when in doubt for the contest. As a fan, I'm interested in watching this on Sunday Night Football. Let's go Raiders, I guess, for the contest.
I was actually really curious what this line was going to open at, because I even thought in my head there's a chance that the Raiders might be the favorites just with how the games have gone over the last few weeks.
It's not crazy. I would never sign off on that, but like the thought, you know what I mean? Like it's never been a possibility until now, is basically what you're saying. And I think I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. And it's like, I see this line and I don't see a ton of value on either side. I was just curious as to what they were actually going to open this game at. Yeah. Because it's kind of telling, right? Like, they could open this Kansas City -7. We know everyone's taking the Raiders. They could have opened this Raiders at 3, and we know everyone's taking Kansas City. So it's just interesting to see, like, kind of where on that scale does it slide to.
And I think it slides. I think this is the equilibrium is just that, the 3.
You're probably right. And then the Monday night game is the LA Rams traveling to San Fran to take on the 49ers. Fat Guy, is there closing line value on this matchup?
You know what I mean? Like, this is a look ahead. I mean, technically I have the Rams going on game happening on the screen next to me, and I'm looking over and it's not going well, right? So I would have signed if the Rams were winning by a lot, that on Sunday Night Football, that sticks around in people's heads, and it's a lot firmer. Like, I find that we don't have an exact number for measuring that, which is something that I'm trying to work on among, literally probably 100 things in terms of betting. But because I'd love to be able to measure that metric, just so I could know, because, you know, if you know which way the line's going to shift, that's printing money, you know, and that's what we're trying to do on this show realistically. So is there closing line value? I'm not really sure. And I'd love to say it's a 5-star lock. With the Rams losing, I still think the public's going to be on them. And I still think the selection I made before before the commencement of this game of Rams -3 is still probably correct. But this half point, it's the hardest hook to get in all of sports, from 3 to 3.5. So I don't think that it's going to shift necessarily. You might get Rams bad juice. That's my hypothesis. So betting Rams now would save you a few cents on the dollar. So I'm going to take the Rams. I'm going to lay the points.
Fat guy, onto the lightning round. Baltimore at Miami Thursday night.
Miami Dolphins with the hook.
Tampa Bay at Washington.
Uncertain bad ATS football team.
Detroit, Pittsburgh.
The look ahead Lions.
Cleveland, New England.
Oh, we got the wrong one up there. The Cleveland Browns.
The Jacksonville, Indy.
Jags plus the hook.
Atlanta, Dallas.
The Atlanta Falcons plus 10.
New Orleans, Tennessee.
Tennessee -2.5.
Buffalo at the Jets.
Jets plus 13.
Minnesota at LAC.
Mispricing, biased Chargers 2.5.
Carolina at Arizona.
Well, let's see the status of injury status of Arizona and take the Carolina Panthers plus 6.
Philly at Denver.
Denver -1.5.
Seattle at Green Bay.
Green Bay, Geno Smith versus Aaron Rodgers, circumstance dependent -5.
Kansas City at Las Vegas.
Real lightning round, eh?
Yeah.
Las Vegas, 5-star entertainment plus 3.
And then Rams at San Fran.
Rams -3.
Congrats to Art999 for going 12-3 against the spread, winning the Week 8 picks against the spread contest. And shout out to Wook Dog, who's 8-3 this week in the first 12 games. We still have 2 games to play, but shout out to Wook Dog, 8-3. And let's just highlight here, Wook Dog actually with this week came into the top 10, and he's I don't know what that math is, but 134 minus 118, and he's tied for 7th right now in the overall. So shout out to Wook Dog, who I believe was the OG winner of the first picks against the spread contest.
And he didn't select 16 games. So if we can give him an aggregate win, he'd be in first if he went average, at 78 wins. So 50-50. So watch out for Wook Dog coming in hot.
And then on to the JS715 name of the week, honorable mentions. Fat guy, take it away.
Kids don't do rugs. Rolling with rugs. Henry Ruggs, future Uber driver. Forget flying carpets. Buy super fast rugs. Just keep the car humming. Michael Thomas, but his ankle racing. Henry Ruggs. Raiders pulled the Ruggs 3rd out. Little Ruggs Corvette. These aren't my favorite guys, I'll be real.
This is the JS715 name of the week. Whoa, kaboom!
So when things aren't your favorite, not that I'm a snowflake, because believe me, I'm not, but let's just harmonize everything a little bit with the JS715. All you need is love. A little bit of Beatles fandom here, and just to put the ice on one young man's reckless driving in Las Vegas and illegal handgun possession.
Remember to make your picks against the spread for Week 10 at BigRyanTheFatGuy.com. $100 prize in Bitcoin to the regular season winner. Fat Guy, that's it. That's Week 10 in the book. It seems like there's a little bit of value here. Surprising being in Week 10, and some of these lines just feel iffy.
Slightly off. It's the one thing though is it's getting harder every year. You know what I mean? And you're gonna have to this is the thing about, even if you had an advantage doing this is one truth of sports that I hate to break it to you, is the sports book doesn't just let you get beat over the head, right? And eventually they just get sharper and sharper. Look at baseball markets, that'll be the best indicator. All winning systems regress. Their trend line is down. So even if you're happy counting your dollars and you're one of the few that's an excellent year over year winning better in terms of spreads, consider other angles and get sophisticated, and that way, so you can sustain a monetary success in the sports betting game.